Hi, I'm Donna Ray.
And I'm Al Wadley.
Welcome to our podcast, Feldenkrais for Life.
In each episode, we will discuss ideas and experiences pertaining to the Feldenkrais method.
You're going to learn skills that will move pain to comfort, anxiety to ease, and we'll explore learning and how to spark creativity.
To learn more about Donna, visit her site at donnaray.com.
To find Al Wadley, go to achievingexcellence.com. Good morning, Al.
Good morning, Donna. How you doing?
I'm good. It's 2024. There's something new about that.
Yeah, it's 2024, and it is minus 2 degrees here in Colorado.
Well, we're in the 50s in San Diego, and that's pretty cold for us, but can't compete with -2.
Yeah, compete with -2. Maybe they can, further north, they can compete with -2, but it's pretty good. It's not too bad, really. The sun's out. It's pretty nice. There's no breeze, no wind chill, then you can bundle up. You'd be pretty comfortable on -2.
Well, good for you. I'm going to go to a music party later today that'll be outside, and I'll bundle up for that.
Hey, good.
You'll see a bunch of Californians with their down coats on.
That's so funny. 50 degrees.
Yeah, that's when we get our puffers out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I remember, I did my training in Berkeley, and, the famous quote by, oh God, what's his name? Well, he said the coldest winter he spent was a summer in San Francisco. Who says that? Mark Twain.
Oh, okay. Mark Twain.
The famous quote by Mark Twain, the coldest winter I spent was a summer in San Francisco. And I was just in the Berkeley area, but it was cold in the summer. Mm-hmm. It was very cold. Well, I wore right down to walk to class.
Yeah, many people don't realize that it's much foggier in the summer in San Francisco. Yeah. It's colder and foggier, and often the winters are sunnier. So, things get turned around.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
California,
where some people say the marbles roll downhill in the direction of California. Now, I love it here. So it's fine to joke about it.
Oh, it's a beautiful state. I loved being able to go down there for my training. It was just amazing.
Mm-hmm. We have a lot of fun here in California, and it's super diverse, geographically diverse, lots of different kinds of thinkers, philosophies in California.
Yeah, very ethnically diverse. Remember that. Really so wonderful in California.
Yeah, I love that too. I love the Hispanic influence that we have here. Mexico's a 30-minute drive away from my home.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's wonderful.
So what are we going to talk about today?
Well, we're going to talk about vertical integration, and I'm going to read a few lines from Dan Siegel's book, Mindsight, so that we define vertical integration, and then we'll dive into it from a Feldenkrais perspective. How does that sound?
Sounds ideal. Let's go for it.
Okay, he says, our nervous system is vertically distributed, ascending from the body proper, through the brainstem and limbic areas, and finally arriving at the cortex. From head to toe and back again, vertical integration links these differentiated areas into a functional whole. So what do you think about that?
Oh, he's describing a very beautiful system, a nervous system, and how it connects up to ourselves, into our brain, and then how it goes back down. It's like a super highway, really, of information going up and down, up into the brain from the body, as he says, body proper, from all the sensory input, and going into the brain and being processed, and then being distributed back down into sensory sensations in our bodies, and being able to move, creating movement, and being able to sense where we are in space. So it's a really important kind of integration to have and to cultivate and to clarify in ourselves and in our students. And the Feldenkrais method does just that.
I couldn't agree with you more. So this information flow is up, down, but it's happening in nanoseconds.
Yes.
So we're making sense out of our sensations automatically all the time.
Something simultaneously too.
Simultaneously, absolutely. It's not
like the blood.
No, it's not one thing after another. It's just happening. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So the functional whole that he mentions is of interest to us in the Feldenkrais method. We're always looking at functionality and how all the parts are working well together. One of the ways to recognize a dysfunctional vertical integration is to see that people are talking heads. So it's a funny way to put it, but I love the talking heads.
Fantastic.
They're fantastic. So I love to, if I want to just get my energy going, I just put the talking heads on and I rock out, and it's fantastic. So nothing wrong with being a talking head, but you can hear the way that people describe their experiences in their lives, whether or not they're integrated with the sensations of their physicality. So if they're figuring things out all the time and they stay in the logical kind of analytical mode and they don't have the textured experience of, heartfelt descriptions of what's going on in their life and connections to other people, empathy, co-regulation, then generally speaking, they are a talking head. Now, I'm a super sensory person, but I think I went through some phases in my life where I was more of a talking head than integrated. Have you ever felt that way?
Well, totally. Yeah. When we're talking about this topic and I was thinking about it, I was reflecting on my early experience when I was first joined the Feldenkrais training, when I first got into the Feldenkrais method, and how I really didn't feel myself much from the neck down, except for my aches and pains and the problem areas is what were in my awareness. But really, I couldn't feel my whole self, from the top of my head to the bottom of my feet. And it was a slow process for me because I've kind of dissociated in that way, going through the training. And I remember about half or 3/4 of the way through the training, I had this moment. It's just standing there in the kitchen washing some dishes, and it's had this moment of feeling my entire self, from my feet all the way up to my head simultaneously. And it's just like a beautiful aha moment of elation. It's just like, oh my God, wow, this is so cool. I can actually feel my whole self.
It's incredible.
Yeah, it was amazing. Yeah, it's definitely, more in my head, and didn't really feel myself physically and didn't know where I was in space. It was kind of uncoordinated and my perception was not very good, but, I was able to get through the world and do stuff. But really, when I got into the Feldenkrais method, then I was really able to embody myself fully. And also, my intellect as well, to bring that into my full self, not just be in my head with, analyzing things, thinking about things, but able to think about them through my entire sensory system.
Mm-hmm. And therefore, you have a lot more information. I mean, this question is of, what is heartfelt? If you don't have a sense of your whole self, that's a hard question to answer.
Yeah.
So my situation's a little different. I was extremely sensory, and I was a dancer. I did all kinds of different movements. I even did some yoga when I was 17 at a local community college. I loved it. I just loved anything that had to do with sensation, movement, and imagery before I started the Feldenkrais method. So when I began the Feldenkrais method, I could sense and feel everything. And when I watched a functional integration lesson, I felt like I was receiving the lesson.
Wow.
I could feel the whole thing. But there was a disconnect between my head and all of those sensations. I did not integrate them. So I would flip in almost like different channels. So I'd be in a talking head mode much of the time without being able to sense, feel the impulses from down below to make sense out of my experience and connection with others. So it was much more kind of a black and white existence. And my head would be much more into the shoulds and the rights and the wrongs and figuring things out. But it wasn't being fueled by my sensory experience of life. So that was a longer process to actually hook up all that information. And now it's quite spontaneous. But I mean, I've been at this for 40 years, but it just gradually it becomes clearer and clearer to know what one is sensing, feeling, thinking, and what we're doing at the same time. And that's what the Feldenkrais method cultivates.
Yeah. You really get to embody ourselves fully and completely. And it's a very rich experience. You're talking about talking heads. And so what are some of the language things that would be clues to that? How would people talk who are not connected with the rest of their selves?
Well, I think we've all had conversations with other people where they leave out references of feelings and sensations, and they kind of know, and they often feel strongly that they know the truth about things. And it's coming from ideas and situations, certainly from the past, of course, but it doesn't have the poetic texture of the whole physicality of being a human being.
Mm-hmm.
What I think in my analysis of the situation, I don't know if I'm going to get into trouble with this, but sometimes attorneys will be talking heads. I've had many attorneys in my practice, and at this moment I have a few, and they are learning how to integrate, to feel, to sense, and to speak from a well-informed point of view.
Yeah. So I've met people, talked to people who refer to themselves, the physical self, as the body. And that to me kind of clues into the lack of integration there. Maybe not always, but it's kind of a dissociated, disconnected way of referring to one's physical self and sensations as the body. I think that's kind of a clue. There's other ways that people also language their experience that give you a clue in that they're not really connected to themselves physically.
Well, what you're saying is common language in psychotherapy. So I hear psychotherapists often say things like, well, we're going to bring the body in to the conversation. And I think it's actually integrative. They are integrating the body. But as we know, if we start to refer to self, and that includes full sensation, physicality, where we are in space, our interoception, what we're sensing, deeply inside of ourselves, then we're inhabiting the body, but we don't have to talk about it like it's this thing that we're carrying around. It's who we are.
Right. Exactly. Why not even take it a step further and say your body? We're going to bring your body into your awareness or your experience.
Yeah.
But I'm so removed, and I just it doesn't resonate well with me.
Yeah.
With you.
So when you add your body, at least it's you.
Yeah.
Your body, not the body.
Exactly.
And then eventually we can simply talk about the self and what we experience, including textured language that describes our sensations and our feelings.
Yeah, that's important.
Yeah, it is really important. I worked with a family, and sadly, the father was quite unpredictable and somewhat emotionally abusive. And the kids had to spend time with him, and their mother monitored the visits. And so I spoke to this little girl, and she was 7. And I asked her to think of a situation with her father and to tell me if her heart said red, stop, or green, go, or yellow, maybe. And she could instantly tell me red, yellow, or green.
Nice.
And then I asked her to do the same thing with the sense in her belly, red, yellow, or green, in these situations with her father. And she could also name it. And she had a cell phone. And I said, anytime you sense yourself and red comes up, call your mother. Mm-hmm. And she said, I can do that. And she did that.
Very good.
And that gave her mother and her a sense of safety.
Nice. Well done.
Yeah. Well, thank you. It was a beautiful moment of empowering the child that she actually had something to say about her experience and to report it.
You gave her a way to calibrate that, turn those feelings into a symbol that is very clear, drawing from the stoplights that everybody sees, and they know what that is, using that as a metaphor. And yeah, it's beautiful. Well done.
Yeah, so she was integrated, she was empowered, and there was enough communication between the parents, although there was discord, that she was able to call her mom whenever she wanted. So it was a situation that was workable in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
But adults can learn how to do that too.
Yes, everybody needs to learn how to do that.
Yeah.
And we need to be reminded to do that because we get caught up in stuff. A whirlwind of life, or, something happens in life, trauma or difficulty comes along, we can kind of lose touch with those sensations and that way to calibrate to ourselves. We all need to be reminded of that.
Mm-hmm. And scanning, and that's a big part of the Feldenkrais method. We almost always start with a scan, and that's part of meditation also. This has been used, I think, probably for thousands of years, along with the breath, to obtain information about what we're experiencing.
Yeah, I really like the scans. And I think we as Feldenkrais teachers have a great palette with which to work and create beautiful scans that are unlike what most people get from like a yoga nidra or something else. So we really can go into so many different levels and relationships of sensing, relationship with the floor, parts to one another, just all kinds of amazing things. The skeleton, the breath, going into great detail, it just brings to life, the entire system in a way that's just so rich.
So you're saying that it's kind of a systematic scanning, and listeners could even do this if they're standing or sitting, even driving, as long as their view is, outside of themselves, because you can have an outside view and an inside view, actually.
Yeah.
People sometimes don't know that. But maybe just go ahead and lead us from the feet up in a way that we could feel ourselves, like a yoga nidra.
Well, let's do a Feldenkrais scan.
Or do a Feldenkrais scan.
Yeah. All right. So if you're sitting or you're standing, if you're driving in a car and you're like going down the highway in a safe place, you could probably do a little bit of this. Don't do it in heavy traffic. And just begin by paying attention to your feet. So sense how your feet are making contact on the floor. And one of the things we like to do in Feldenkrais lessons that aren't done in Yoga Nidra or other scanning disciplines is we like to make comparisons. We like to really enliven and enrich the sensory experience by noticing the differences between the two sides. So you can sense your feet on the floor. And sensing the feet on the floor, you can pay attention to your heels. And sensing the heels, you can notice that there's weight on the heels, so pressure on the heels. And if you listen carefully enough to your sensation, you can probably find that there's a little more pressure on one heel than the other. This is true for other parts of the foot as well. So you might find more weight towards the outside edge of one foot or towards the big toe of a foot. So just notice those differences. And then bring your attention up into your lower legs and sense your tibia. That's the shin bone in front. And sense the fibula goes down the side, connects to the ankle and the knee. And then sense your knees. And if you're lying down, you might notice that there's a difference in the bend of each knee. Knee might be bent a little bit more. Maybe sitting in the chair, you get a sense of one knee's bent more. And then bring attention up into your area of your thighs and sense your femurs, the big bones of the upper legs, and how they connect into your pelvis. They connect deeply into the pelvis. So if you think about that crease, if you're sitting, that crease between your thigh and your torso, about halfway in, halfway front to back, is about where those hip joints sit. And then you can get a sense of your pelvis. and the width of your pelvis. How is the weight distributed on your pelvis between left and right sides? And for most of us, we have a little preference to lean one way or the other. Just notice if that's true for you. And you can come around and you can sense the back of the pelvis, which is the sacrum, also known as the holy bone in ancient cultures. And the lumbar spine stacks up on top of the sacrum. So you can get a sense of that lumbar spine above the sacrum, and notice in the position you're in, the shape of the lumbar spine. So for most of us, there's an arch to it that arches forward. It's called the lordosis. And you can spread your attention to either side of the spine and sense what's happening in either side of the spine, lower back. You might find one side is arched a little bit more than the other. One side might be closer to the floor. And then coming back to the spine, moving up into the thoracic spine. That's the part of the spine to which your ribs attach and wrap around to form your chest. You can sense your ribs in contact with the chair behind you, or just in space if you're standing with the floor. And notice here too, you might sense some differences in the way the ribs relate to the floor. And then bringing your attention up to the shoulder blades, sensing the shoulder blades. And notice if your shoulder blades are touching the back of the chair or they're on the floor, different sensations between the two. You might find that one has a clearer contact on the floor. And in between the shoulder blades is that very large vertebra. It's the seventh cervical vertebra, C7. That's where the spine transitions into your neck. And it arches forward like lower back and comes up and connects into your skull. And you can sense your shoulders, your arms are resting, your hands are on your thighs. Notice if one is more forward than the other one. Notice if your elbows are bent, straight. And then sense your head. Sense the relationship of your chin and your chest. And sense the back of your head, where you rest on a pillow. And sense your forehead. And your eyes, your nose, your lips, your jaw. And just take a few moments and then just sense yourself overall now. Notice how you feel differently than before we did this scan. We do a scan like this almost before every lesson. And it turns your attention inward to sense yourself. And it primes your awareness for the lesson to become more aware, more easily do with the lesson as we go into it. How's that for you, Donna?
Wonderful. Wonderful. I feel calm, present, embodied. I can hear a difference in my voice. It's richer and fuller.
I hear that too.
And yeah, my face is calmer. I feel like I'm seeing differently. I have my eyes open during the scan, and nevertheless, my vision has changed. So that was a beautifully led experience of exploring our skeleton. Now, many people are not familiar with all those bones, and hopefully it'll create some curiosity.
Yes.
So you may want to check out your bones, look in a book, look online. There are multidimensional skeletons online that you can find and explore. So the more awareness we have of our skeleton, the more differences we are able to perceive. And in the Feldenkrais method, we know that when you perceive differences, the nervous system begins to change itself. Mm-hmm. Awareness actually changes how we do what we're doing. And a nice place to begin is with the skeleton and with breathing. And that changes the state that we're in. I don't know how long that scan was, maybe a couple of minutes, but there was a very quick, immediate change. And if you can't identify all the parts, it doesn't matter. You simply go with it.
It's just a matter of bringing your attention to those areas. Mm-hmm. That'll wake up your sensing. The more you bring your attention to those areas and you have those questions, you're curious, then those parts become more and more alive, become more and more a part of your self-image and in your daily self, part of your daily self.
Yeah, and when you're talking about self-image, that's inclusive of all of those sensations and body parts. And we bring all of that as a whole self into our functional activities. And that's an example of vertical integration in the Feldenkrais method.
Yeah. Yeah. Very nice.
Now, we have body scans of all kinds. So this one was delightfully involved with the skeleton, and sometimes we will include muscles and the amount of contraction we sense here and there, or breathing. And sometimes we include what are we feeling emotionally, what are we sensing overall, what thoughts are coming and going, very much like a meditation process. So the Feldenkrais method is inclusive of all these different ways to experience ourselves. We're not very rigid about this. Like, we don't have a lot of rules. I would say a few of our main rules that creates pleasure in the experience is being somewhat systematic as you just were. So when you follow yourself, from your heels to your head, it's somewhat predictable. Your voice was very, very calming, and it was also predictable. So if you're listening to someone and they're going, okay, now cinch your heels, cinch your hips, cinch your shoulders, cinch your head. Now notice your face, your nose, your cheeks. That's going to make you feel like a ping pong ball.
Mm-hmm.
And also the tone of voice matters. So it sounds so simple, but it's extremely nuanced to create a very comfortable, pleasurable scan. And we can also introduce other suggestions like look for the pleasure, look for what's comfortable while you're resting. Because so often people look for what's not comfortable. They're habitually looking for pain and discomfort. And that's not going to serve us in general. We want to look for what is working and what feels good. And I love that about the Feldenkrais method, to reduce effort and search for pleasure.
That's such a key idea to our work, is organizing around towards sensing that what feels good, what feels right. And you're right. Some people are so connected in, they're so used to feeling what's uncomfortable, that becomes the metric for them. Does it hurt or does it not hurt? But either way, if you're thinking it doesn't hurt, you're still thinking about hurting. And so rip attention away and find out what feels good, what makes sense in a way that is comfortable for you to move and feel yourself. And then doing that, you cultivate a sense of well-being and health and comfort. And the parts that were unpleasant, they just kind of fade to the background.
That's right. And this creates vertical integration. If the habit is to look at what is uncomfortable in the body, then why would you want to, include your sensations in your life? Why do that? So it makes sense for people to be very mental in a way, to be analytical, to speak from the head, and to not really consistently digest what's happening in sensations because they're uncomfortable sensations. But we know that when you become aware of how you're doing what you're doing in the sensory way, everything becomes easier and more comfortable. So there's a natural progression to inclusion of the whole self while practicing the Feldenkrais method.
Spot on, Donna, spot on. Yeah, that's good. It's been a very good discussion.
Yeah, I like it too. I mean, there's always more to say, but maybe that's enough for today. I hope our listeners are satisfied and that you get to take away that wonderful skeletal scan, and that you'll tune in next time. And if you want more, you can always go to our websites, achievingexcellence.com or donnaray.com, and find recorded lessons that we offer for you.
Yes, very good. Right, cool, good. Well, thank you. And be well, Donna, be well, listeners.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Bye.
Bye. If you'd like to follow up with a question, send an email to info@feldenkreisforlife.com. We would love to hear from you.
You can learn more about us on our websites.
You can find Al at achievingexcellence.com.
You can visit my site to join my classes and reach out to me for private lessons online or at my Longmont studio. You'll find my store, the Feldenkrais store, there as well. We can purchase books, audio products, and videos. Donna's website is donnaray.com.
And if you visit my website, you'll find that I'm offering individual sessions, group classes in the Feldenkrais method, mentoring groups, professional Feldenkrais training program information, and recorded lessons.
Thank you again so much for joining us. I look forward to you hearing us next week.
Bye now.
Bye.